the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Touchdowns through the air, like some big plays, and then everything else. And then you just feel fine because I think even Kentucky this year where the Nimrod drop and who was the other big drop? Was it Squirrel? I don't even remember now. Brazel. 2 touchdowns, and we look at that game completely differently because Nico has 400 yards. He has multiple touchdowns in that game, and it's just a different feel for this offense. And I think that's my takeaway is that Dont'e Thornton is the most important player on this Tennessee offense. And if Tennessee wants to make a deep run in the college football playoff, Dont'e Thornton has to be healthy, and Dont'e Thornton has to get the ball. Like when Dont'e Thornton gets the ball, good things happen. And this team and this offense specifically can score 30-plus points. This was their highest scoring point total in SEC play. And a lot of that was because Dont'e Thornton had 2 touchdowns, and the Tennessee passing attack down the field in particular was the best it's been in SEC play. And that is the difference. It's like this offense will always be able to run the football. Dylan Sampson, whether or not he's here next year or not, Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, Dwan Morris, whoever is back there, they're going to run the football well. Like this was a top 25 rushing attack in 2022. But what separated 2022 was the passing attack. And the best version of Tennessee still has to come from elite quarterback play and at least one receiver who puts a lot of fear in defenses and can stretch the field vertically in a way that can have the kind of 86-yard big plays when you dig yourself in a hole like Tennessee did early on in that game. I can't say enough and emphasize enough about how much Tennessee's fortunes this year come down to Dont'e Thornton and his ability to get the ball.
Okay, you said a lot. I agree with most all of it. I agree with Dont'e Thornton. He's the only guy that seems to strike fear in opposing defenses. I mean, I'd love to just go down the list and see the 25-plus yard pass plays that Tennessee's had this year and how many of them are Dont'e Thornton, because it feels pretty radical. How many of them have been him. Certainly Squirrel's had a couple. Bruce had a couple. I can't hardly remember any for Brazel, honestly.
And Brazel had an okay day on Saturday. Best we've seen in a while.
Yeah, he did. And especially when you consider it with the Thornton big plays aspect, especially when you consider it with the number of snaps he gets. Like it just feels like he's the only guy that has a lot of juice in that receiver room and can take the top off the defense. And, look, he was open on the ball that Nico severely underthrown and was intercepted on. Really the only mistake or bad play or one of the few bad plays in Nico's day. So I completely agree with that.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, also credit to Dont'e Thornton. Great tackle. Saved 25 yards, 30 yards on the return, and then Vanderbilt got flagged for something too, which, especially made it a punt because he had 15 more yards. So agree with that. The one thing I would disagree with you on is I think Tennessee still would have won, even if Dont'e Thornton, didn't play.
I think it'd be a lot closer. I think that's a game in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
Closer, yes. I think Tennessee still would have scored on their first touchdown drive. I mean, it was a 28-yard slant. And I mean, that one was obviously Thornton deserved credit for it, but he was wide open. Whereas the second one's different. I'm not sure which other Tennessee's receivers had the speed to win the race to the corner and take that, whatever it was, 10-yard pass, 15-yard pass.
I mean, it's probably Brazel and that's it, but even still, like, we haven't seen that from Brazel all year long, so counting on it to be him in that spot is...
Yeah, for sure. And then the question you had posed, or Matt had posed to you and you posed to me, completely agree that I thought Tennessee would have been good, but, all about the defense and very little about Dylan Sampson's numbers. And I think, and obviously I don't have the numbers in front of me. I haven't run them. I do think Tennessee has run the ball better this season. I don't think it's been dramatic this season. I just think that you have one running back getting the vast majority of the yards, where the last 3 years it's been 2 to 3 guys that have gotten a ton of yards and they've combined for it. So I think that would have been my assumption more than anything. That's like, all right, either people behind
they were 10th nationally in rushing last year. Like that's the thing. It's like they were 10th. It was just a trio, like you said. That's the difference. It's just one guy versus a trio.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the questions for how good can Tennessee be this year was the defense. And can the defensive line play up to its hype and find some answers in the secondary? I mean, they struck gold at corner with Jermon McCoy. The defensive line's played up to the hype. And then it was largely, the offensive line and Nico. And Nico has been good, but hasn't been elite. And just, telling me those rushing numbers wouldn't have answered that question for me. Wouldn't have answered the questions about the passing game. So, yeah, your assessment on Dont'e Thornton being the X factor, I think that's completely true because obviously just the week-to-week unknown, it feels like, with this Tennessee team is its passing offense, and he just hasn't. Thornton just brings kind of an element to it or a juice to it that really no other pass catchers have.
So I was doing some digging, and some of the stuff I was writing about this week is like, so how many games would you guess Tennessee's receivers this season average less than 10 yards per reception in a game? Which games?
Which games? Arkansas, Oklahoma.
Not Oklahoma.
Not Oklahoma. Really, they threw so many of the screen passes against Oklahoma.
Yeah, Dont'e Thornton.
I guess you got the 70. You got the 70-yard touchdown from Thornton. Probably takes that away.
Yep. What does that game look like without Dont'e Thornton's big play?
Yeah. No, it's true. I'll say Georgia because they didn't have any big pass plays. Really, that's what the questions become. When did they have the big pass plays? Florida, I don't think they had big pass plays in that game unless
they were over 10 in Florida.
They were over 10 in Florida.
And over 10 against Alabama. Which I mean, it's just
Alabama,
tell you what
Alabama for sure. So I'll say Arkansas, Georgia, and Kentucky, I guess.
Nope. It's just Arkansas and Georgia.
No.
Those are their only two losses, and it's the only two games the receivers did not average more than 10 yards per reception. I understand the Dylan Sampson and the running game stuff this season. And it's why I answered that question to Matt the way I did last night, is Tennessee is going to be able to run the football. Like, Tennessee has been elite at running the football the last 4 years. The difference between Tennessee winning in Athens, Tennessee winning these tight games on the road in the SEC, is the explosive plays. They had no explosive plays against Georgia. They had 140-ish yard explosive play against Arkansas. They can't win. Like, if you're going to lose the time possession battle, if you are going to be in one of these low-scoring dogfights, what separates Tennessee on the road is those big plays. Like, Tennessee was chunking LSU to death in Death Valley in 2022 on the road. Like, the way Tennessee is going to win these big games, come college football playoff time, they'd be at Columbus. We'll find out tomorrow in that first round, or they get Columbus here, or they get the Buckeyes in Knoxville. Either way, Tennessee is going to have to commit. They are going to have to connect on chunk plays. It's just, and the only person this season that you can realistically look to week over week to connect on chunk plays is Dont'e Thornton. Like, Nico Iamaleava had his best 4 quarters of a football game this season, which is a great spot to be in, is that Nico is playing his best ball right before the college football playoff. That's incredibly important. He was efficient. He ran the ball well, which we should throw out. Like, Nico, That's another level of his game. Like, Nico, the stock is rising, and this is another part of it, is guess how many of the Power 2 schools have an underclassman who will be their quarterback in the college football playoff outside of Tennessee?
Outside of Tennessee, doing a quick run through, I'm guessing 0. None come to mind
0
for the Power 2.
It's only Nico. Nico is the only underclassman who will be starting a college football playoff game for one of the Power 2 schools. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas, and even Alabama now, with their odds shifting heavily overnight with Jalen Milroe.
I guess South Carolina, if they get in, they'd be in the same boat.
Yeah, but if it, like, I just don't think it's, I don't think South Carolina's going to get in, but either way, like, it's going to be Miami. If it's Miami, guess what? Cam Ward. Like, this is uncharted waters here. Like, Nico is kind of ahead of schedule and had a lot on his plate that a lot of guys have not. Look at the season Jackson Arnold's had. Look at the season that a lot of guys around him have had. Nico is improved, and Nico's calmed a lot of those worries, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for how well he played in this game, even with it being Vanderbilt, but there was still a lot of pressure here. Like, this was a big pressure cooker that he looked totally calm. Like, Nico was just calm, collected, and I think now we're actually maybe taking it for granted a little bit, is that Nico did not panic, 14-0 down. He did not panic after the interception. He ran the ball really well. I think Nico has turned the corner in a lot of ways. And we talked about it. Like, his last 20 quarters of football have been really good as a whole. So I think Nico is rounding into form. And I think next year it's going to be really good for Nico. We'll see what the offensive line looks like. There's still a whole offseason to get through. But I think the stock's rising on Nico. But to put a bow on it, the numbers don't lie with Thornton and this passing game. When Tennessee's receivers are not making plays and not raising the yards per reception, Tennessee loses. And when they have 14 point something that they had against Vanderbilt, they're going to win those games because the defense is that good. They run the ball really well, so they can play keep away if they want to. They can get first downs on the ground. They don't really turn the ball over that much. They play really good special teams outside of Boo Carter, who had a rough night against Vanderbilt on special teams, but he's still learning. Tennessee's a really, really tough out when Dont'e Thornton is clicking and that Nico's able to find him a couple times a game. Like, that's the difference between, I think, Tennessee having a deep run or being their first team, being one and done. I really think it comes down to Dont'e Thornton and Nico's connection.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's just a chunk plays because that's the key for the offense. Yeah. And Thornton is the guy there. And look, I think that's a really good point about Nico deserving a lot of credit for how he played in this game and responded to some early adversity, both from people around him not playing well on Tennessee's team and then himself making a mistake with the interception when at a point in the game where it felt like Tennessee had kind of just grabbed the momentum really for the first time. So I think that's fair. I would say the one thing, I want to see Tennessee hit the over the top chunk plays. And that's where I say how much of it's Tennessee, how much of it's Vanderbilt. Look, I just don't know that the slant routes to take him 70 yards are going to be there against Ohio State, against Penn State, Notre Dame, yada, 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 whoever Tennessee's going to play in the playoffs. I think they're going to have to hit some of those balls over the top, which, the plays haven't been there as often. Nico hasn't been quite as consistent on them, even in the last handful of games when he's played well. That would be my curiosity. I wouldn't even call it pushback. That would just be my curiosity. And you're right, Thornton's the only one that feels like can get open. Occasionally they scheme it up well for Squirrel to get open down the seam. And he was, I don't know if you could tell in the TV broadcast, I guess Tennessee's opening drive, his second half, he was wide open on one when Nico was kind of rolling left, and then Nico, had to evade a defender and made a nice play running. So it wasn't Nico's fault or anything. But so that would be my curiosity. Look, I would tone down the question of Tennessee winning a first round playoff game. And I know this is very simplistic. I think Tennessee will win a first-round playoff game if they play at Neyland Stadium, and if they go on the road, they're not going to. Like, there's not a whole lot of evidence towards Tennessee winning big games on the road, and there's a whole lot of evidence towards them winning a lot of big games at home. And I know that's simplistic. I know the next 3 weeks, really 2 weeks, I guess, once we know on Sunday, we'll dive into a lot more details about the game, and we'll talk about all the keys. And I 100% agree creating chunk plays will be one of them. But to me, when I think of, all right, what's the biggest key for Tennessee to get by the first game, them getting a good draw and being at home is number one for me.
It is, but what's funny is, like, I think Ohio State's the ultimate. Like, if it's at Ohio State, I don't think that's a good situation for Tennessee. In Knoxville, like you said, I'll take Tennessee just about anybody at home among the potential options for a first-round playoff game. But I think at Riley Leonard in Notre Dame Stadium doesn't really scare me. I think Nico will be fine there. I think
nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.